for some spooky horror movie, something scary to watch this Halloween. Some horror movie suggestions. Now, I'm not really a big horror movie person. It's not really my go-to genre, but I am a big movie person. I love movies and TV. Like, I'm really into film, and I've done filmmaking in the past. That's what originally got me started on YouTube, and so along the way I do watch a few horror movies, and I just picked up 10 selections here, kind of off the top of my head. And I'm not saying these are the 10 best horror movies or anything of all time. These are just some of my favorites, some things I like watching from time to time. Maybe not even my favorites, just some horror movies that have been on my mind, or maybe things I've seen recently that I'm going to suggest to you now if you're looking for something a little bit scary to watch, and I can't put 10 selections here. Now, these first two are not really horror movies as much as they are TV shows, so I'm kind of breaking the rules right off the bat here, but my first pick for something I think that you should potentially watch this spooky season is Midnight Mass, and this is a Mike Flanagan Netflix series. Mike Flanagan's done a number of these Netflix series now. He just released Fall of the House of Usher, which I'm very excited to watch. I've been unable to see it. And just as a spoiler, Haunting of Hill House by Mike Flanagan is the next up on this list, but Midnight Mass, while it is certainly not the best Mike Flanagan horror series that Netflix has produced, it has an extremely interesting story topic. It really taps into that sort of religious horror, which I feel like has been ignored a lot in modern cinema. Go back to like The Exorcist, and back in I think that was the 70s or 80s, and this is very religious horror, and now it's, you look at the most recent Exorcist, and they almost like leaned away from the fact that this thing is demonic, and it's very religious in nature, but Mike Flanagan here is not afraid to really tap into that religious horror. You really get into the Catholic, like, the whole the pomp and circumstance of Catholic worship, and the fear and guilt and everything that comes along with that, and the reveal of the monster in this series, and the rules surrounding the monster. Just really fantastic. A lot of amazing character performances in Midnight Mass, and it's a series that stuck with me long after I, finished watching the final episode. Some of those final scenes of this series, are ones that I will always remember. And on that same note, another Mike Flanagan series, like I said, Haunting of Hill House. Now he also did Haunting of Bly Manor. I didn't really like that one as much as Hill House, if you want to really get into the horror aspect. And it's a very unique, original take on the horror genre, the way that it is intertwining the horror aspects with the family drama and mental health and psychological horror is just extremely interesting. As much as I like the other projects Mike Flanagan has put out, like I said, I haven't seen Fall of the House of Usher yet, so I don't know what that one's all about, but I feel like nothing he has done since has reached the highs of Haunting of Hill House. All the characters are extremely well written and performed. The story's amazing, the visuals are amazing. And even after you've watched the series one time, you can go through and try to find all the hidden ghosts lurking in the background of mini shots. Okay, now we're gonna start getting into actual movies. Those make up the remaining 8 titles on this list. First up, I want to suggest Under the Skin. Now this is a bit of an older movie, 2013, so about 10 years old. And it's an art film starring Scarlett Johansson. And I think this was filmed before 2013, but then like they sat on it for a long time, and until well, Scarlett Johansson got famous and they released it. I'm not really sure. More people like know this as the movie with like the Scarlett Johansson nude scene, but honestly, like, no, the story of this movie is super good. It's a slow burn, so you really have to be in the right mindset to watch this. You know, this is not a popcorn movie. This isn't something that you throw on and, like, you know, you don't really pay attention to it. Like, you know, this is a slow burn movie. It's an art house movie. It's about an alien that comes to Earth and takes on the body of a young woman, Scarlett Johansson, and it's a very interesting look. It's all about human psychology and like things like that. So, if those sorts of alien, you know, anything paranormal, extraterrestrial, and then also maybe a little bit of an exploration of humanity, what it means to be human, the human subconscious, things like that, that interests you. Perhaps I could recommend to check out Under the Skin this Halloween. A horror movie from a few years back that I went and saw opening night. I liked it so much I ended up getting the little, I don't know what you call it, but the little, the placard that goes above the theater, that, you know, the little rectangular placard. I got one of those for this movie. I ended up liking this movie a lot more than I thought I would, but the movie It Follows, super simple premise, but what I like about this movie, you know, one thing that makes me dislike a lot of horror movies is that the movie does not follow the own rules of the universe. So what I'm saying is, like, you set up a monster, you establish a set of rules, but when movies start breaking their own rules to either allow the monster to live or, you know, do something, or to kill the monster, you know, as soon as movies start breaking their own internal logic, that's when I really start to tune out. But what I appreciate about It Follows is that it never breaks its own internal logic. And obviously, you have a lot of, you know, the whole monster of this movie is basically a metaphor for sexually transmitted diseases, pregnancy, whatever you want to say it is. But it's an extremely interesting concept for a horror monster. Very original movie overall, and a horror movie that I have returned to and watched many, many times over the years, ever since it came out. Definitely one that I did not expect to like as much as I've ended up liking it, but it has become a movie that is in my horror movie rotation when we start to get into this time of the year. Next up, I want to talk about an indie film that I think ended up getting pretty big. And it's funny, as it was actually an Australian indie film. It was made here in Australia. It premiered at the Sydney Film Festival, and that is the movie Lake Mungo. This is more of a psychological thriller. It's all about a girl who dies, and ghosts and hauntings, and there's a little bit of deception in there. It's hard for me to really talk about this movie without spoiling it, but if you're into those kind of movies where it's about like ghosts, but it's like kind of very subtle haunting, and, you know, people kind of questioning the sanity of the character, and like, is it the haunting real? Is it in your head? You know, and the haunting is very subtle. I think you will like Lake Mungo. It has a very interesting story, and there's twists, and there's twists upon the twists. It's not like you won't see it coming. There's a couple bits where you're like, because they add things, like, you know, in the movie there's like these photographs, and then there's a twist surrounding the photographs. You learn out like the truth about them. And you're like, oh, okay, so that's what it was. But then at the end of the movie, they reveal like one more twist about the photograph, and like you see it again, and there's this other part of the photograph. But like, if you go back and look at it originally, like, that part isn't there, so it's like things are being added later on to like make the twist work, but, you know, you can't figure it out of your own volition, you know. So that's one of those things I don't really like. But overall, this is it's an original movie. It's an indie movie, small budget horror picture, which in my opinion is like always the best, but a super original story. And I definitely recommend you check out Lake Mungo if you're into something a little bit different. Next up, Midsummer. This is one of those A24 horror movies that came out around the same time as like Hereditary. I think this came out just a little bit after Hereditary did. I know Hereditary gets a lot of the praise of the A24 horror movies, but I actually prefer Midsommar. I don't know, maybe it's because of my Scandinavian roots or whatever, but just the whole premise around Midsommar, the setting, the vibe with like the Mayfair and all that, and the horror iconography and imagery. You know, there's some very disturbing stuff here, but some very visually interesting stuff. Sort of like a ritual magic type thing. So getting into some like old religion type stuff, like occult type things. So if that's your vibe, if you're into that A24 type horror movie, Midsommar. If you've seen Hereditary but you haven't seen Midsommar, I would recommend. You know, if you like Hereditary, if you like that type of thing, I think you'd like this movie. Next up, one of my favorite horror movies of all time. I went and saw this in theaters at the Hollywood Theater in Portland, back when I lived in Portland, on a small screen. And that is Mandy, starring Nick Cage. And this is one of my favorite horror movies of all time. It's directed by Pantos Cosmatos, who's a Greek filmmaker who also did a horror movie, Under the Black Rainbow. I believe it's called. Let me double check that. Is it Under the Black Rainbow? Beyond the Black Rainbow. Beyond the Black Rainbow. Panos Cosmatos. It was his feature film debut. And yes, Beyond the Black Rainbow was 2010 to 2018. He does Mandy, and then he has a movie in production right now called Necrocosm. You know, I would definitely recommend Beyond the Black Rainbow. Beyond the Black Rainbow is maybe a little bit more psychological horror, like trippy, that type thing, compared to Mandy. Mandy's like a horror movie slash revenge thriller. It's a very hard movie to classify. But I fell in love with it the minute I watched it in theaters. Super cheesy, extremely interesting visuals. There's parts of this movie where like it's super slow burn and just like a shot of somebody's face as colors change and stuff, and you're like, what am I watching? All of a sudden you have Nick Cage fighting demon bikers with a sword, like, and there's a chainsaw fight in this movie. Like, the visuals are gonna trip you out, the story's gonna trip you out, the music's amazing. Highly recommend Mandy. This movie did not get enough love when it came out. Another low-budget horror movie. This one I think is a Netflix original. I think it might only be on Netflix. It's called The Ritual. I'm really into like Norse mythology and that stuff. And there's like a horror movie. These friends go hiking in the woods, and then they start encountering these horror things in the woods. And it's all focused around Norse mythology, and there's a lot of very occult imagery, occult horror, ritual horror. I mean, it's called The Ritual, monster horror. Super underrated horror movie. I never saw a lot of talk about this. That's one of the guys from The Big Short in it. I don't remember his name. I think he's also the guy from Midnight Mass. I think, I'm not 100% sure, but I think he might be the guy from Midnight Mass. But, yeah, The Ritual, very good horror movie, check that out. Two more left. One of these is actually one of my favorite movies of all time. It's in my top 10 favorite movies of all time list, as well as my horror movies of all time list here, but, The Lighthouse. Now, this might not necessarily be a horror movie, you know, this isn't gonna scare you. There's no jump scare moments, there's no, you know, it's hard to classify this as a horror movie. It's more like a psychological thriller, but I do think, you know, if you're not one for jump scares, if you want something a little more cerebral, psychological, I'd maybe check out The Lighthouse instead. It's black and white, shot with these old cameras and lenses and stuff, in a 4:6 aspect ratio, you know, so it's very artsy in that way, but you have some amazing performances by Robert Pattinson and Willem Dafoe. Amazing set pieces, really beautiful imagery. The ending of this movie has, you know, been stuck in my head ever since I watched it for the first time. I've seen this movie probably 5 or 6 times at this point. I think it came only in 2019. But instantly, first time watching it, I added it to my top 10 favorite movies of all time list. It's right up there with some of the best movies I've ever seen, but, not as scary as some of these other titles on this list. But, if you're not into something super scary, but you want something maybe just a little bit of a horror edge to it, but not a full-on horror movie, I would check out The Lighthouse. And finally, we had to go my favorite horror movie of all time, one of my top 5 favorite movies of all time, Halloween. We're talking about the original Halloween from 1978, starring Jamie Lee Curtis. Now, obviously, it is a little bit dated at this point. You're not going to have the gore of a modern horror movie. You're not going to have the jump scares of a modern horror movie. But for me, nothing beats the original 1978 Halloween. I watch it every single year on Halloween. I've never missed a year watching this movie. Like I said, it's one of my favorite movies of all time. It invented the slasher genre of movies. Michael Myers, one of the best movie villains of all time, period. And this movie, put up, Jamie Lee Curtis as the original Scream Queen. She was one of the best final girls in horror cinema. Like I said, a little bit dated. And the sequels are never great. The Rob Zombie movies are not great. The current sequels, not great. Halloween. I actually don't hate Season of the Witch. There's a few sequels, H2O, there's a few hit or miss ones out there, but the original Halloween, of all those slasher movies, I think Friday the 13th is the best franchise-wise, but for my money, the first Halloween is still the best of those slasher movies as far as a single movie goes. And if you're gonna watch nothing else this Halloween season, throw on the original Halloween. It's a movie that you can just have playing on the TV while you do other things, whatever. And then you'll hear a scream come back in the room and you can see Michael Myers taking care of somebody. So those are 10 suggestions I have if you're trying to find something spooky to watch this final day of October. Midnight Mass, Haunting of Hill House, Under the Skin, It Follows, Lake Mungo, Midsummer, Mandy, or Beyond the Black Rainbow. Pick your poison there. Either way, it's going to be a great trippy movie to watch. The Ritual, The Lighthouse, or Halloween. So, thank you guys so much for watching. I do hope you found this interesting. Let me know in the comments if you end up watching any of these movies for the first time and what you thought about them if you do. If you liked the video, leave a thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel for more content just like this almost every single day. And until next time, guys. Bye-bye.